multiplayer shooter is legion, with more and more being released each month, or possibly even each day. Really, it's hard to say which multiplayer shooter is better than the other. But for me, I'm at least going to try. Now, the first few multiplayer shooters that I really got behind were, of course, the COD games and Left 4 Dead, specifically Left 4 Dead 2. Now really, that game still has some lasting popularity. But then, one fateful December, I would be introduced to a game known as Killing Floor, a game that actually takes multiplayer shooting to something a bit weightier. There's no respawning and then trying again. Oh sure, you can respawn, but you have to try the entire level over again. And there's a bit more to it than just shoot zombies, find health pack, find plenty of ammo, and reach an exit. Oh no! This game is much more complicated than that indeed. So, for now, why don't we load up our hand cannons, get our armor on, and take a look at it. Now before we get into the game itself, let's first take a look at its history. Killing Floor actually started life as an Unreal Tournament 2004 mod that was released in 2005, and that version of Killing Floor will receive updates until 2008. Now, Killing Floor has been pretty much developed by both the original mod team and Tripwire Interactive, and it would see its first retail release in March of 2009. Now, over the intervening years, the game has not simply been abandoned. Instead, it has been tweaked, it's been patched, new elements have been added, and while the game we have today in 2014 is more or less the same we had back in 2009, it is definitely refined since then. The gameplay for Killing Floor is at first glance just standard first-person shooter fare. You kill all and try not to die, but the reality is a bit more complex than that. In this game, you must survive successive waves of enemies. The severity and number of enemies varies by difficulty to difficulty, and by how many people you have in your current party. Now in the game, you don't just pick up random weapons off the ground, although if you are blessed by mighty Telos, you can sometimes find, and I do mean sometimes find, a weapon lying on the ground, and usually doing so is a godsend. In order to get weapons, you must buy them at the trader, and they are not going to be cheap either, and you only get money by killing enemies, which means if you die in the middle of the wave, well, you're going to be asking for change indeed. But really, weapons and armor and things of that nature are only one small part of the actual gameplay. Unlike other shooters, this game actually gives everything a more or less metaphysical weight. You know, in most multiplayer shooters, nothing really has that much weight to it. In Left 4 Dead 2, you can die and your teammates can rescue you. And health packs are fairly plentiful, and all the guns are pretty much interchangeable, but in Killing Floor, this is certainly not the case. In this game, you must choose your loadout carefully. If you pick a bunch of idiotic weapons, or don't get enough ammo, or God help you not buy armor, then you're going to die very quickly. And each game is pretty bloody harrowing. I say this because if you choose, a long game, you're going to have to fight through a shit ton of waves and a shit ton of enemies. And if you die on just one wave, well, the entire level is over. So really, the most important aspect of gameplay is strategic thinking. You have to know where to hit the enemy and how to hit them. Every bullet must be used wisely, and every dollar must be spent well, although technically these are pounds. So essentially, every pound must be well spent. In for a penny, in for a pound, indeed. In short, this is a game that you learn to play as time goes on. This is a game that requires extensive strategizing in order to win successfully. Graphically, the game looks pretty bloody good. Sure, it may not be the next Crysis, but overall, items and maps all look quite realistic, and the enemies have a nice visceral look to them. For as old as this game is, the graphics have really held up quite well. Sound for the game is excellent as well, with all of the various monsters sounding suitably intimidating, and the weapons have nice throaty roars when fired. And the shotgun sounds like it has nice big balls of lead, because, well, fuck environmentalists and their bloody steel shot. Voice acting for the game is quite good as well, and and it's fairly comedic. And before too long, you will find yourself talking about welding this doa or calling money dosh. Now, the music for the game is really quite good, and it is very heavy metal based and provides for great listening whilst fighting the various hordes. Now let's get into the meat of the game and take a look at the classes. The class system for the game is actually pretty well designed. Each class has some perks that go with it, and while you can choose any of the weapons at any time, it's best to stick with your class's weapons, as you will get a monetary discount and will usually get some sort of class benefit like more ammo per mag or reload speed. Furthermore, each class can level up and they get progressively more useful as you level up, as one would expect. And going back to the concept of metaphysical weight, leveling up is not easy in the slightest, as it requires a great amount of play in order to increase the level, thus being more rewarding. Now, while you can play the game single player, the game really should be played multiplayer, and it really should be played realistically cooperatively. And by cooperatively, we don't mean just going off on your own, then leaving your friends to their fate. Really, if you go off on your own, you can only expect to die, and die horribly, as is fitting. You have to really work together in this game to not die. You must watch each other's backs, and you must fight like a team in order to make it out alive. Now, when you first start a level, you have a grand total of 2 weapons. A basic tactical 9mm, with a flashlight, which actually does come in handy at times, and a knife. Now, you can run slightly faster if you have the knife out, and the knife itself, in skilled hands, can actually be a fairly effective weapon. Also, in addition to both of those, you have a healing gun and a welder. That's where I'm welding this doa comes from. And essentially, you can use the welder to weld doors to set up barricades to hopefully stay alive for just a few more seconds. Also, when you kill an enemy in a suitably dramatic fashion, or whenever the game feels like it, the game will go into Z time, which is a bullet time-like thing, and it can be both useful and annoying. If you're the person who triggers Z time and you're actually in the process of shooting other enemies, it's actually pretty good, but if you're a player that's just sort of walking down a hallway, it just makes walking down that hallway just a little bit more annoying. Now, I bought this game for both myself and Mizio during the 2011 Christmas sale. And seeing as how that was both our first exposure to the game, we just ended up calling all the various enemies by their Christmas names, and I'll probably be doing them interchangeably, calling them the Christmas name and then their legit name. So the basic enemy is the elf, or helpers. They are easy to kill, but they can grab you and then swarm you. This happens more time than I care to mention, and it is always annoying being brought down by these guys. Then you got the gingerbread men, and they can sprint, and they have a big ass knife on their hands, and death can ensue quite easily, as one could imagine. Then you have the Santas. They're kind of like the boomers from L4D, but their spit does a bit more damage, and they can sometimes be armed with cleavers. I actually find these to be some of the easiest enemies in the game, but the bile itself can be a fuck you kill at times. Then there are the reindeer, but one can also call them spiders, or I like to call them Spideraxes because the X makes it sound cool. They are dangerous because they are small and fast and come in large numbers, and they can leap a bit as well. Then there are the invisible bitches, although they can become partially visible bitches when playing as the commando. They are almost impossible to see, and they do a great deal of slashing damage. Then you got the screamers. They screech at you a bit, and they can detonate grenades if they are thrown at them. Usually you can kill these guys before they become too much trouble. Then you have the snowmen, and I swear their AI has been tweaked a bit. In the past they might shoot at you a little, but now they are accurate and can get off a shit ton of shots. Then there are the chainsaw guys slash icemen. They take a crap ton of punishment and can sprint at you with their chainsaws. And they can kill you in relatively short order, especially when you're reloading and they're just wailing on you with said chainsaw or just arm. And then you have the nutcrackers, and they do bust balls indeed, as they take short tons worth of punishment and can kill you in a very few hits. At least they used to. In my opinion, these guys have actually been nerfed a bit, to the point where you can actually kill one fairly easily. And last but not least, you have the final boss, the Patriarch, or Big Santa. He has chain guns, rockets, invisibility, and can soak up huge amounts of punishment. And also he can turn invisible and go heal. Really? In some ways, one could say that he is the Cyber Demon Jr. of this generation. Not as successful as his progenitor, but you can definitely tell they're at least a little bit related. So unlike in other games, the enemies in this game actually can engender a great deal of fear. Mainly because they all have a pretty good chance of killing you. And when that boss shows up, even the most experienced players get a little nervous. Like any good game, Killing Floor has a great modding community with huge numbers of custom skins and mutators, and a veritable infinite number of maps. In all reality, this is a game that doesn't really get old because a legit game changer is just a Google/Steam search away. And so that is Killing Floor. A game that can never really get old, as it actually has enough elements to keep it fresh each time you play it. Now, I would recommend just waiting a couple of months, at least as of this recording anyway, and getting it whilst it's on its Christmas sale. Not only will it be really cheap, but you'll be able to shoot an evil Santa in the face. And with that, this is General Lotz, signing off.